on and make a head pop.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? Give me a sound check in the chat. Someone can do that to make sure I'm being heard correctly. When you do this one man show, you don't have an assistant to check the sound levels or anything else that's going on. So you gotta depend upon my buddies in the chat to let me know we're good to go. But hey, I'm Dre, Recovery One Drones. I appreciate everyone who's here. And we're going to jump right into it because we're going to cover a few things as I advertised that, in spite of all our efforts that have been going on for the last couple years, it just seems that our elected officials just can't sit still. There's a lot of things going on. We're going to cover it from the federal to even the states, that some have snuck some new legislation in, and some are pending legislation that is gaining a lot of traction. And a lot of this has occurred from incidents happening out here in California with the wildfires, incidents happening in other areas that have had disaster situations across the nation, where people have just taken upon themselves to, just don't be that guy, type situation. And there's a lot of states that are passing laws like that. This recently, the state of Oregon has just passed a law referencing it being a felony, I believe it is, for interfering with first responders or law enforcement activities and fire activities in the state of Oregon. And it's a law that I would say I have to support, because this is where these situations come into play. They give us a bad name. There is another law that is making its way through Congress that has the support of just about every professional sports group: NFL, Major League Baseball, NASCAR, NCAA outdoor events, because of the number of incidents that keep reoccurring, not just once in a while, but we keep having incidents of drones being flown over stadiums, other large activities, and disrupting these games and activities outdoors. So in a way, I cannot blame states and other local jurisdictions and want to create these "don't be that guy" law, is what I call them. We're up in the ante as far as getting people who seem to do this, and like I say, it's not going to be no more slapping on the wrist, no more excuses. I didn't know. Like I say, it's going to be, if you bought this drone, it is on you to know. So we're going to do a quick little shout out to those that are here. I think it was East Coast Thrills that was first on the list, followed by I think it was Time to Fly Owl, Novice Quads in the house. I saw Giggles FVP, and a few others that may be here. Waypoint New England. Appreciate you guys coming in. Appreciate you guys involved in the chat, and so on and so forth. And like I say, we're going to get right into this, and we're going to start off with the great state of Texas right now, is where we're going to start. We're going to start off with Texas. I hope everyone can see this. If you are from Texas, you do work in Texas, or whatever the case may be, this is something that you need to be aware of. Texas Government Code, Chapter 423. Texas Law, Title 4, Chapter 423, Use of Unmanned Aircraft. Okay? That is where we're at. Chapter 423 of the Texas Government Code governs the use of unmanned aircraft, commonly known as drones, in Texas. This chapter outlines various regulations and exceptions regarding the capture of images using drones. And that last sentence is very important, because you notice they didn't say anything about airspace and things of that nature. It said this chapter outlines various regulations and exceptions regarding the capture of images using drones. And I'm going to get back to that a little later on, and I'll tell you why I emphasize that. Section 423.001, the definition. This section defines what constitutes an image under the chapter. An image includes any capturing of sound waves, thermal, infrared, ultraviolet, visible light, or other electromagnetic waves, odor, or other conditions existing on or about real property in Texas, or an individual on that property. Now, we just had another incident recently in the state of Florida about a guy flying the housing development and whatever else in the villages of Florida. This law has been in effect for, I think it was just late last year, early this year, and the Florida law almost mirrors each other. And I'm going to read a certain section on this later on. We go through each part. Section 423.002. This section lists scenarios where it is lawful to capture images using drones. Professional or scholarly research. For research and development purposes by higher education institutions or those who are affiliated with it, like research development, things of that nature, can use a drone and capture images, and they're not going to be in violation of the law. FAA test sites. An airspace designated as test sites or ranges authorized by the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, which will probably include AMA fields and other designated FAA-approved sites. Military operation. As part of the U.S. or Texas military operations, they are authorized to use drones. Satellite mapping. If the image is captured by a satellite for mapping purposes. Notice it did not say drone, it said satellite. And then the last part here is electric or gas utility operations. For operations related to electric or gas utilities, they are authorized to fly and take pictures in the state of Texas. Now the section right here, section 423.003, offenses. Illegal use of unmanned aircraft to capture images. Okay? It is an offense to use a drone to capture an image of an individual or privately owned real property with the intent to conduct surveillance. Now that last part is going to be tricky part because it's going to be up to whoever the investigative body or whoever the jurisdiction of the officers or the court who you may find yourself entangled with, what they're going to determine what is surveillance. Why were you taking these pictures? The penalty there in Texas is this offense is a Class C misdemeanor, which is basically a slap on the wrist and may have a fine of no more than probably $10,000 or less. The defense on this, your get out of jail free card, destroying the image without disclosing it can be a defense if done promptly upon realizing the violation. In other words, he said, oops, my bad, let me delete this. So if you think you're going to go out there and take pictures, video, whatever, post it on YouTube, guess what? You're going to have to be the one that has to delete your YouTube videos and everything else to get yourself out of that mess. Okay? And it covers that. Section 423.004, offensive possession, disclosure, display, distribution, or use of image. Prohibition. It is an offense to possess, disclose, display, distribute, or use an image captured violating section 423.003. Once again, the penalties will be a Class C misdemeanor, or it could be bumped up to a Class B misdemeanor, which bumps it up to probably from 30 days jail to 6 months, maybe up to a year. Because usually after a year, you go to state prison. A defense, if you destroy the images before, can be a defense for possessing offenses. And this is what covers posting on social media. When it talks about display, distribution, that is what covers social media. If you're out there taking pictures and video and going, getting views. Because that's your intent. And that's why I say you may have to take down your channel or erase all those videos that you have. Section 423.006 covers your civil liability. Individuals can recover civil penalties or actual damages for violations. The penalties include $5,000 for capturing images and $10,000 for disclosing them. There you go. So $5,000 for taking the pictures, put it on YouTube, Facebook, whatever else, TikTok, Instagram, $10,000 for disclosing those videos or pictures. Malice. If images are disclosed with malice, actual damages can be recovered. Which basically means if you're actually spying on people to embarrass them with that intent, it can all be kicked up a notch. Section 423.009, regulation by political subdivision, which basically means goes down to cities and counties. Uh, Political subdivision, like cities or counties, are generally restricted from regulating drones except for specific circumstances, such as during special events or on government property. So, like I say, special events can be everything from a parade to whatever else is going on. That's large gathering of people, all that kind of stuff can be considered a special event. So, like I say, some of these terms are vague intentionally, so they can be, like I say, a catch-all thing to what they determine what a special event is, all that kind of good stuff. So you got to watch yourself. That's why I say you got to know the law to keep your butt out of a sling. Okay. It goes on to talk about, and this is the part I want to emphasize. It says additional context. Chapter 423 has faced legal challenges, particularly regarding First Amendment rights. However, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has upheld the law's constitutionality, finding it does not violate the First Amendment. The law remains one of the strictest in the U.S. regarding drone use, especially for journalists and non-commercial users. And this is why I tell people is the big thing right here. I tell people all the time, our elected officials may not be the most informed individuals, but they have people that work for them. They're called their aides and whatever else you want to designate them as. These are the folks who go out and do the background information, who go out and contact the lawyers and so forth to make sure when they start passing laws that 9 times out of 10 it will pass judicial review muster. Okay? So like I say, this law in Texas has gone, people have fought it, and they have won in court. So it's been reviewed. And I always tell people 9 times out of 10, states can be more restrictive on laws, but not less restrictive. You know, the federal law is the benchmark. A state law can be more restrictive, but it can't be less. And the only exception of that is, to this date, is states that approve the use of marijuana. It's the only instance that I'm aware of where states have gone above and beyond what the federal law states. So that is the only rare occasion where that has been backwards. But 9 times out of 10, states will be more stricter on certain laws, or at least will use the federal law as their laws. They will mirror that law from there. Okay. Yeah, Al, that's why I see it too, that they're definitely putting the handcuffs on hobbyists. But even like I said, if you're a commercial operator like you and I are, like Lawrence is, and Herman and a few other folks that we talk to online here, we have to be mindful of these local laws, state laws also. And that's why I always try to emphasize to people, make sure you have your paperwork in hand. Make sure that you got it in hand, you got it on your phone, you got it somewhere that you can get access to it, that basically that tells people, this is why I'm here, I'm hired to do this, and everything else. And that's what I'm saying, that you got to cover yourself. You just can't take it upon yourself. In a lot of states now, that I'm gonna go down and go film the new building they're building down there, or the new housing project down there, just for my own pleasure. Because I said you could be finding yourself in violation. Because like I say, it's one thing, it's not a recreational flight anymore. Because you're videoing or taking pictures over private property. So that in itself, you're talking about property rights, surveillance violations, privacy violations, because you never got authorization from that property owner to take video or pictures of the ongoings on that property. Now, we're going to switch over to a few more states here. Bear with me. as I line these up. Let's go over to the Ohio law. Okay, let me move this over here. The state of Ohio. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. Let me go. Oh, didn't mean to do that. No, I'm the one having issues. Okay. I don't know if you guys can read that. If not, I'm going to read it. This is for the state of Ohio. And a lot of these bills I'm reading are not old bills. These are bills that have been passed within the last 4 to 5 months that are coming to play. This Ohio bill was voted on and signed by Governor DeWine, and it goes into effect, I think, in the next 90 days. It says here, Ohio now officially has its own rules regulating the use of drones or unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, which will allow the state to charge Ohioans who operate drones recklessly, interfere with first responder activities, or commit other flying faux pas. The regulation comes from House Bill 77, legislation championed by Clark County Rep. Bernie Wills out of Springfield. I'm not going to worry about what side of the fence he's on because we're getting attacked by people on both sides. Okay, approved by Ohio Governor Mike DeWine this week. Once the bill becomes law in 3 months, the rules will mirror and expand the drone regulation framework already used by the federal government while giving the state added power to prosecute for federal offenses. Okay, now you read that carefully. I said it's going to use the FAA guidelines as its baseline, but the state's going to have added power to prosecute for federal offenses. Ohio will now have the ability to prosecute their own UAV laws that mirror federal laws. Willis said in a press release, this legislation doesn't create any new licensure regulations for UAV pilots. It allows Ohio to have local control of our airspace and hold pilots that are operating in an unsafe manner accountable without having to find a U.S. attorney to prosecute. This is a step in the right direction, but there is still more we need to do to protect our airways. As it's a press release. All right. And like I said before, they're talking about because of these incidents of people flying, interfering with first responders, law enforcement, firefighters, all this kind of stuff, and other activities that people are getting upset with this type of behavior. And this is how they counteract that behavior. They start bringing, instead of hitting you with a fly swatter, they want to hit you with a ball peen hammer now. Now, this is like a vague statement here. The first one talks about operating a drone in a reckless manner that endangers others. Who's going to be the determination of that factor? It's going to be either the first person that you come in contact with, and then it may be in somebody's courtroom to determine what is reckless endangerment. Operating a drone in a way that is prohibited by the Federal Aviation Administration. Okay? Operating a drone that interferes with first responder activities. Operating a drone to record or loiter over or near critical infrastructure. And you notice they have a list here which can include railroads, TV or radio transmission facilities, courthouses, police stations, hospitals, jails, military installations, and more. Now, what gets me is this: how many of us have seen people do videos dive bombing radio towers? So that's what they're getting at. All these kind of stuff that we used to do for fun or whatever, we see other folks do for fun. Now we can get caught up. How you doing, Jason? Good to have you in there. Okay. Next, the bill also authorizes local governments to establish their own ordinances on private drones used in or above parks or other property owned by that local government. And that's takeoff and landing stuff. So that's where the state of Ohio is at. And this just came into effect. I think this one was done in February of this year in the state of Ohio. Okay. Bring up that one. This is Connecticut. The state of Connecticut. Connecticut was sneaky. They were very sneaky in what they did. And this came out in February also. Uh, Here in Hartford, Connecticut, this is like the AP press release. Connecticut lawmakers passed emergency legislation Tuesday prohibiting state agencies and municipalities from purchasing or using Chinese and Russian drones while also imposing restrictions on where drones can be operated in the state. The bill comes amid bipartisan concern in Washington about possible threats to U.S. national security posed by foreign adversary drones. Several states, including Tennessee and Florida, have already restricted the use of Chinese drones by their public agencies, which they're saying, we all know Florida took away the drones from their police and firefighters. Apparently Tennessee has done it also, which is becoming more of a thing across the nation to where they are restricting their first responders from being able to purchase anymore. And pretty much a lot of places have set deadlines and when they have to stop using the ones they already have. All right. Under Connecticut's bill, which moves to Democratic Governor Ned Lamont's desk, certain state agencies, municipalities, as well as entities that contract with them would be barred from purchasing prohibited drones after October 1st, 2026, and from using them from October 1st, 2028. Just like I stated, there are cutoff dates and so on and so forth. Now, in that sentence right there, this can affect people like myself and other commercial operators because it says in this last part of the sentence, it says, certain state agencies and municipality as well as entities that contract with them. That means even though if the state agency or, what the case may be, they can't fly, they cannot contract with me or other commercial operators to fly also on their behalf after these dates, which will be October 2028. They can't buy one after 2026, and I say no one's going to be able to fly one using state funds or local municipality funds after October 1st, 2028. The state's Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, which includes the state police, is prohibited from purchasing the drones beginning this year after October 1st. The agency already implemented such a policy last year. The bill bars people from operating a drone less than 250 feet above a critical infrastructure facility, such as an electrical generation facility or a prison. Violators could face up to nearly a year in prison or a fine up to $2,000 or both. There are exceptions for workers using drones at those locations as part of their jobs. Drones also cannot be equipped with deadly weapons or incendiary devices under this legislation. So that's what Connecticut slid in. It's like no one even got a heads up about this. It was emergency action. And I'm sure it was, it was those, who have close ties to some people in Washington and say, hey, you need to do this. Don't know why. I haven't heard much out of the state of Connecticut as far as them having incidents, but I think that whole mess that occurred last was December, January with the unknown drones or whatever, end up being FAA contractors, all this kind of stuff, scaring people half to death. Initiate stuff. I mean, this was emergency action. There was no review of anything else or timeline. Let's see what happens. This was lawmakers passed emergency legislation across the board. Governor signed it, which is just crazy in my book. Total craziness and stuff. So let's go down to my favorite state, the great state of Florida. And they got stuff that's still pending. And that's what gets me. New Florida bill would give, this is one that is pending. New Florida bill could give residents the right to shoot down spying drones, Who's determining what's spying and what is? And this is why it's so important that if you're out and about recreational flying, it's almost like you just need to take the SD card out. Don't even try to, film anything, take pictures, or whatever the case may be, to cover yourself. That way you can say you're not spying because you have no way to spy. But other than that, it's Senate Bill 1422, sponsored by State Senator Keith L. Trudeau, aims to give residents more control over their airspace. The proposed legislation, placed on the Florida Senate calendar on April 16th, which was last week or so, is stirring up debate for potentially clashing with federal aviation laws. A bill advancing through the state Senate will allow property owners to use reasonable force to stop drones conducting surveillance within 500 feet of their property, which doesn't make any sense when we know the FAA caps us at 400 feet unless you are trying to get a authorization waiver to go beyond that. So that's just, as I say, this is what you call shooting spit walls against the wall and see what sticks. This is one of those laws. And Texas has one very similar to this that is creeping through its legislation about giving property owners authority to take down drones. And like I said, the key thing here is what do we consider as reasonable force? I mean, if somebody's flying 300 feet, what's only reasonable force you're going to be able to use is you got to use a weapon. It's not like you're going to be throwing a rock 300 feet in the air. You're going to have to shoot at it with something, which endangers the lives of both folks in the air and on the ground. So I don't know what these people are thinking, what their mindset is, or anything else. So that's just bananas in my book, outright bananas. Now the kicker. This is the one that we definitely gotta try to figure out. This is a Senate bill in the United States Senate by Senator Mike Lee out of Utah. There have been videos about this already. I think Big Moss just put one out the other day. I think it was 51 Drones put one out last week. But like I tell them, we have to be mindful of every piece of legislation that comes through, no matter how ridiculous it may sound to us. Just like this Florida law and Texas one about giving people the right to shoot down drones. It may not sound comprehensive to us, but like I say, this is what the raw first version of this may look like. It could be reworded to something else, but still have the same intent that will harm what we do. And Mike Lee has been a anti-drone person for pretty much the last 8-9 years. This is his fourth attempt to send up some kind of serious restrictions on drone operations. I hope you're reading this as I'm talking. This is a summary on the bill. I didn't want to go into the deep details because there's something else I want to add to the end of this. This bill, known as the Drone Integration and Zoning Act, aims to clarify and balance the regulatory authority over unmanned aircraft systems, drones, between the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and state and local and tribal governments. The bill establishes a comprehensive framework for drone operations, focusing on preserving property rights and local governance, while promoting the integration of drones into the national airspace. Key provisions include defining the immediate reaches of airspace as the area within 200 feet above ground level where state and local governments have more regulatory control, and creating a process for designating authorized commercial drone routes. The bill ensures that local governments can impose reasonable restrictions on drone operations, such as limiting flight speeds, which don't make no sense. I mean, like I said, they can be more restrictive because we know you can't go over 100 miles per hour according to the FAA. Okay, So I don't know how they're going to have somebody up there directing traffic and have radar guns in the sky determine somebody's doing 35 or 55 or 85. Who knows? Okay. Prohibiting operations near schools or public spaces and protecting privacy and property rights. It also requires the FAA to update navigable airspace definitions, create a streamlined authorization process for commercial drone operators, and establish guidelines for drone takeoff and landing zones. Additionally, the bill promotes collaboration between federal, state, and local governments in managing drone traffic and safety, while maintaining the FAA's ultimate authority to ensure the safe operations of aircraft in the United States. Now, to dissect what I just said around all of that right there, basically, like I want to explain to people, the FAA is not independent organization. The FAA takes its orders from Congress. Okay? And we already know the House has already tried to pass 3 or 4 or 5 pieces of legislation to try to restrict drones, ban Chinese drones, and all kind of other stuff they've been trying to do over the last couple of years. Now we got somebody in the Senate trying to push something through at the Senate level, because the last time something got to the Senate, certain language was excluded, but I'm not gonna say I saw it. Other folks told me don't worry about it, but I always tell folks, when people tell you don't worry about something, that's when you need to worry. Because on the last drone, or was it the Authorization Act for military, I believe it was, approval for the funding for it, Section 1709. I saw that section. I read that section. This got approved, and I brought it up to a few key people in the drone community, and some of them folks said, well, we dodged a bullet. I said, how can you say we dodged a bullet when Section 1709 is our death sentence? If you're not familiar with 1709 of the Military Authorization Act last year in December, this is where we talk about somebody's supposed to take up the initiative to take up these Chinese drones, particularly DJI in question, take it apart, figure it out if it's transmitting information or has the ability to transmit information back to the Chinese government, all this kind of stuff. Well, today's April 27th. We're 4 months into the year. All right? The summer is going to skip by because Congress don't do a whole lot of nothing over the summer, especially the last month of August. And even right now, they're so busy trying to avoid constituents at town hall meetings, they're not going to be doing anything else but trying to stay low. So I don't foresee anybody from the Department of Energy, from the Department of Defense, from the Department of the Interior, and whatever else is left to do any work in D.C. is going to take the time to put forth the man hours it's going to need to actually dissect one of these drones and figure out what it's capable of and what it's not capable of. So Section 1709 of that act that got approved through the Senate and the House last year could automatically ban all Chinese drones by the end of this year. Okay? Let me say that again. It will automatically ban Chinese drones at the end of this year if no one takes on that task that was stated in the law that was approved. So this whole thing here, about 200 feet, now this is kind of like a nice summary, okay? In the actual bill, it uses language that was taken back during the remote ID back and forth. And if you go back and read the actual bill, it talks about shielded operations. How many here folks remember that terminology? Shielded operations. It was something that the FPV community was fighting hard to get. They wanted to say that we don't fly higher than treetops, and we just want something to give us shielded operation coverage, that we would not be required to abide by all these other restrictions if we stay below. Now, this 200 feet above ground limit that they want to give local jurisdictions control of, tribal lands control of, and whoever else control of, they use that language as they're be the ones who would control, and they call it shielded operations, shielded airspace. The same language, the same verbiage that FPV pilots were using 3 or 4 years ago when they were trying to fight against remote ID requirements. So like I said, don't think that our elected officials are slow or dumb. They might be ill-informed, but they pick up what we're putting down. And evidently they're trying to use it against us by using the same language that we were using. So that's why we have to be careful about what we ask for, you know. So that's what I'm saying, that, you know, you have to be paying attention to what's going on at the federal level, your state level, county, city, whatever, because stuff can get slid in, which I think what's going to happen here with this Mike Lee thing. I don't believe it's going to go in the initial form that it's in, but pay attention and see if it doesn't try to get slid in with something else. And we know the House has already tried to pass bills, so if he can get some support in the Senate, which we hope those in the Senate have a little more slow roll to what's going on, that it won't make it see the light of day out of committee where it's at now. And you see the top of the screen, it's in committee as of April 2nd. So, like I say, if this happens to crawl its way by itself or not, like I say, I believe it's going to be attached to something else, and where people won't read it and won't pay attention to it, and actually know it'll find itself getting approved in the House in a heartbeat. So, like I said, it's a big deal, always a big deal. So you got to pay attention what's going on out there at all times. And like I say, I really feel for recreational pilots, because right now, all these bills that we just covered from Texas, Florida, Connecticut, Ohio, and other places already have bills in place. Florida, I said, they're talking about trying to handcuff us commercial operators. They're not even talking about allowing hobbyists to fly, period. Because like I said, they want to give control over to local jurisdictions and so forth. And like I say, prohibit things happening in local parks, state parks, local regional parks, all this kind of stuff that happens in counties. They're talking about knocking all this stuff out. So you got to be aware. And like we said, I think it was Vic Moss in his video. He talked about Stefanik, because she didn't take her appointment to the UN. She is still hot and heavy on the ports, slowing down the delivery of Chinese drones into the country. And I say right now, with this tariff situation going on, we are all starting to see price changes on equipment. So, not that that's intentional to keep drones themselves out, but it seems like everything is basically stacking on top of another thing. If you are able to buy a drone, so to speak, will it get delivered? Will it pass customs? And now they're talking about the thing now, I think is with DHL, will not deliver a drone valued over $800. DHL is by one of the very few international shippers that bring stuff from overseas into the country. and then they may hand it off to the Postal Service or UPS or FedEx or whoever else may deliver it for them at that point. But now they're talking about $800 limit. So basically, anything above a Vada, anything actually a Vada 2 is over $800. So basically, you're talking about mini drones. You're talking about the Mini 2, Mini 3. I don't think the Mini 3 might be close to that ceiling. So basically, if you can't get what you want, you're killing off the hobby, pretty much. And like I always tell people, I say, oh, they're talking about, order it from direct from DJI. I said, if DJI can't get into the country, like I say, they'll move on to other countries. They'll move on. Like I said, they'll sell in Canada, they'll sell in Europe, they'll sell in Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, South America. Like I say, USA is a big market, but it ain't the only market. And I'm sure there's like other things that are going on around the world, other activities regarding these tariffs and everything else. These countries are making deals amongst themselves. The United States is a big market, but it's not the only market on the planet. And they are making deals amongst themselves to get what they need. So I'm not going to keep you longer. I've given 46 minutes. I think I have covered everything. And my last words, anybody, especially if you're a commercial operator, just be wary. Make sure you have all your ducks in line. Make sure you got your information with you, your authorizations with you, everything lined up, so you don't have to be concerned or looking over your shoulder if somebody walks up and asks you a question or asks you for your credentials. You can be confident that you're good to go. For my brothers on the recreational hobby side, you guys got to do something. You guys got to stand up for yourselves, get some things done. Because, like I said, you can't go out to Best Buy and buy a drone nowadays, unless it's an older one. Amazon stuff is limited, just like everybody else. B&H, they're all trying to pull that pre-order stuff from other places, So you guys got to be mindful of what's going on, because it's going to impact you the hardest. They still might make exceptions for people like me to go out and fly and do work, because, like I say, it's work. Like I said, I just did 2 Amazons this week inspecting solar panels. Okay? So that's work. And it's work that's low risk for safety. I get to do the first part of the inspection. And basically, if I see any anomalies or anything else on review of that flight, then we can say, okay, do we need to put somebody up on that roof to go out there and check out the panels in this section, on that section. So, like I say, for those who fly recreational, it's going to be a tough hill to climb, very tough hill to climb, with all these legislations coming out at the federal level, state level, and like I say, don't be surprised in some of your cities and so forth, you're going to start getting more regulations. That's why you may have to take the time to research and know what's going on. So as I say again, this is Dre, Recover One Drones. I appreciate those who came in tonight and those who stuck around, and I will see you guys on the next one next month. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.